with this, we can welcome our next speaker. Is Dr. Imran Nasim. He's an AI engineer, apologies, at IBM, and he will talk about generative AI, I guess, and a bit of applications at IBM. So, Imran, the floor is yours, and thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me. Can everybody hear me okay? Is that good? Yeah, so apologies in advance. I was responsible for your early coffee break because of the train delays, but hopefully that we can get started soon. In terms of Gen AI for industry, I think we can all say that the field is rapidly evolving and industry adoption is only increasing. But there's a lot of insights in terms of enterprise considerations when adopting new technologies, and hopefully that's something that I'll be able to convey today. So in terms of the agenda, I really want to start off with how did we get here in terms of the AI landscape, sort of a little bit of history, and then some considerations into why we feel that there is an industrial impact for Gen AI, and in particular about how it's going to reinvent working. And that's where we really see a lot of the impact of the use cases that we're currently working on, not only in IBM, but across different industry sectors. And then I want to go on to further on to do with current utility. So some of the things that we've been working on at the moment, as well as some of the emerging trends that are coming around, and then finish off with a summary and outlook. So a quick question to start off. Who's interested in pursuing a career in academia? Raise your hands. Okay, and how many is interested in pursuing a career in industry? Okay, so the sum. Okay, brilliant. Right, so the history of AI sort of goes back to the 1950s, per se, with the advent of what AI is. And really, they were defined as techniques to enable machines to have cognitive functions, right? So we, as humans, have certain cognitive functions, such as learning, reasoning, perceiving, etc. So it was really sort of set out with this very, very large goal. There was not much developments, of course, at the beginning due to lack of infrastructure and many other things. And then you sort of progress towards the 1980s with the advent of machine learning. And this was founded on very sort of statistical principles. And the main idea was pattern recognition, right? So you give it a bunch of data, you aim to apply a machine learning algorithm, and you get sort of some undercover patterns. And this was actually really, really useful. It's still used today and still is the founding blocks for scientific machine learning, a lot of the things. I would say the really cool stuff started to happen in the 2010 space with the advent of deep learning. So this is when neural networks, and specifically deep neural networks, were sort of introduced. And because of the universal approximation theorem, they were very, very, very useful for function approximators. And they've been really, really useful also for scientific machine learning, as you probably have all heard by now. And they are still today the building blocks of the current craze, I should say, which is foundation models, and which is a major part of Gen AI. So foundation models are based upon the transformer architecture, which was proposed in 2017, the intentional is all you need paper. And they've just taken everything by storm. I mean, a quick raise of hands. Who here back in 2019 heard of foundation models? Raise your hand. Okay, 2. And how many of you know about foundation models today? Raise your hand. Yes, pretty much everybody, right? So I think also that there's a number of things that are rapidly developing also in the research side of the foundation model space, which are very interesting. But I'm going to tend to focus a little bit more about the industry applications. So I'm going to make a statement here, is that foundation models are bringing an inflection point to AI. But there's a big difference between a cool technology that can do certain things, and then there's enterprise adoptions, right? How can they actually scale that and get value from it? So I'll start off first with a few figures. So we expect, and this is a report done by Gartner, that in the next 3 years, if there's swift adoption of Gen AI, it can add about $3 to $4 trillion worth of economic growth, right? That's pretty stark. 80% of productivity gains will be across creative tasks and knowledge workers. And 80% of enterprises will have incorporated Gen AI into their business processes, which is pretty huge. And 70% of software vendors will integrate Gen AI in their enterprise applications. So I think it's fair to say that generative AI has immense potential to accelerate digital transformation. But the question is, how will Gen AI actually do this? Which is the question that I put on the bottom right. So before I go into this, is there anyone who can give me an idea about why Gen AI is particularly important for industry? Why do we care? Why do we care about Gen AI for industry? Any takers on the question? No? Okay, good. So that's what we're going to go into now. So the idea is it's going to reinvent how organizations work and specifically how employees work, right? So at the moment, we work in a very plus AI driven way where AI is really just an additive. It's not the major component of how business operates. And we really want to transform that to an AI majority model, right? Where we have sort of human supervision as the additive. And this is where we can see a huge shift from sort of manual labor to this idea of digital labor, right? And that's pretty significant.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
2 slides back, the premise was swift adoption.
Yes.
Do you think that will actually happen?
So this report was actually published quite a while ago, about 8-9 months, and these numbers are in fact going to be increasing, is what was expected. So swift adoption in terms of industry, we're seeing that, yes. It's the new craze. So at IBM, we call this the AI ladder, right? So the bottom rung of this ladder is currently where enterprise is at the moment. So there's a lot of manual curation, collection, organization of the data, enriching the data. And a lot of these processes are done largely by humans with manual labor. And maybe there's a little bit of AI that comes alongside if you're doing some data analysis, things like this, some level of automation. But we really want to move to the top rung of the ladder, which is where AI really does the work. And there's a few steps in order to get there. The first of which is you kind of want to add AI to your applications, right? Without AI in your applications, you can't really expect it to do any automation. And then you want to work on automating workflows. And I'll get into a little bit of what this means. And then the idea is you want to replace your workflows, right? And that way, AI is doing majority of that work, and then you have that super sort of human intervention there, just looking at the supervision of what's going on. So this is the stage that sort of clients adopt. So they're currently kind of here. Some clients are a little bit higher up this ladder, but the idea is really to get to that top point. So the formatting is a little strange here, but I'll go into a little bit about what this is. So this is looking at what are the primary drivers of economic value, and really it's in productivity. So it's not that AI is just going to come and just do everything. It's really going to be assisting what humans do. And that's really where the value gain is going to be. So there was a number of executives which were on a survey and looking to embrace generative AI to optimize and to automate. And this is across different business sectors. So for example, you've got IT processes, customer service workflows, supply chain, HR and talent management, sales and marketing, operations, or finance. And we've seen a significant adoption, at least towards the initial stage, with IT processes and customer service workflows. And there is a growing demand also for finance, and that's something that I deal with a lot now, a lot of the big banks. So I'm not sure if anybody's used a mobile banking application, right? There's often times where you can ask it questions and it gives you pretty bad answers. That's going to be changing quite soon, so that's already in the works. But the point I wanted to make here is that it's spread across various industries. It's not just concentrated towards one particular portion. Right, so in terms of the use cases we've seen at IBM, so a lot of them have been in talent, customer service, and app modernization. So when I say talent, I'm meaning the talent and HR productivity processes. So for example, talent acquisition, performance management, employee data management, learning and event management, these type of things. So the Gen AI particular things that we're using here would be content generation and classification. So we're training and tuning relevant foundation models for specific HR-related tasks. I would say the biggest increase that I've noticed is in customer service, right? So the way that customer service operates at the moment, I don't think anybody here likes picking up a phone and calling customer service to return a product, right? It'd be nice if you can automate that. And that's really where we've seen businesses adopt this technology, right? So there's one particular big bank that I was working with, and now if you go onto it's in their beta stage, but if you go onto their mobile banking application, you can directly interrogate whether you can get a mortgage or what type of fees that they have. And you don't have to go to a mortgage broker to do that now. That's a lot of it's automated and personalized. And this is using a technique called retrieval augmented generation. Is everyone familiar with that, what that is? Retrieval augmented generation? Okay, don't worry, I have a slide on it later anyway, so that's fine. And app modernization, I think this is really, really cool about automated code generation. You've probably seen there's a number of code foundation models out there, and they've got some really, really cool stuff coming out very, very soon. Something that we work on at IBM is COBOL to Java. So COBOL is sort of how old mainframes run, and all the big banks use COBOL. So that modernization to Java is something that we're I would say, pioneering at the moment. But these are the use cases that we've seen, and there's a growing number of them as well. And this is just to mention just a few. Right, so there is one key distinction about adoption, right? It's what the enterprises have to consider to adopt the technologies. So if you're going to a multi-billion-dollar corporation and just saying, okay, adopt Gen AI, right? They're going to turn to you and say, well, how do we do that, right? What's the first steps that we need to take? So in order to do that, at IBM, we've come across and come up with a series of 5 generative AI truths, right? Which we sort of give to the client and say, these are things that are going to happen with Gen AI, so think carefully. So I'll go through these sort of in fair detail. So the first one is the multimodality. Now, the world itself is multimodal, right? We've got audio, we've got vision, we've got language, we've got touch, etc. So the development of multimodal models is definitely going to be prevalent. So making sure you have that within your roadmap and frameworks is going to be important. The second is about how you actually deploy these models, right? Because that's a completely different beast, requiring a lot of interesting infrastructure. So we believe in a hybrid cloud methodology where you can sort of really run the workflows from anywhere. You don't have to be on premises, you don't have to be on cloud, you can have a hybrid situation. And that's what we're seeing particularly with IBM at the moment with our generative AI platform, What's Next. We've seen some really good successes there. I would say the biggest thing within the last 3 to 4 months has been around governance. So I think everybody here has probably heard about the mishaps and certain hallucinations that some very large language models from certain companies, which I won't comment on, have spewed out some things which can be hateful, can include profanity, can include personally identifiable information. And that for enterprise is just a no-go, right? There's been a few companies who've had some serious problems associated with that, but I won't get into that. So in terms of a governance framework, so at IBM, we have What's Next governance. So it's an in-house governance framework that connects with foundation models to have everything sort of collated together. And I'll get into a little bit about what governance actually means for foundation models in a little bit. And then a truth number 4, which is the scale of value, right? So if you're going to an enterprise and saying, okay, this Gen AI thing is very, very good for this niche problem, they're not going to care, even if it is good, right? It's got to be able to scale with the business, right? So you have to differentiate what type of negative and impactful ROI you can have with this technology. So for example, if the time saving for a meaningful innovation is plus 40%, and it's taking 23% to actually get it done, then you've got a delta of like 17%, so it's pretty good. And this is the idea associated with that. And then of course, number 5 is data, right? Data is the modern age gold. Without good data, you're going to be having some serious challenges. I mean, there's a lot of developments along the way in terms of synthetic data generation, but having even a small corpus of important data relative to that specific industry is important. Right, so now in terms of enterprise considerations, so there's sort of 5 questions that, I mean, the formatting's a bit dodgy here, but there's 5 questions that Gen AI adopters typically ask around strategy and value, technology and data, experience design, operating model, and talent and culture. And the first question really is, what's my overall vision for the impact AI can have on my organization, right? Because I think adopting any technology, you first want to see what type of impact it can have. Right? If it's not going to have an impact, you're not going to really care. That's pretty much the basics of that. About how you develop the models and deploy it, right? That's another key consideration for enterprises. Not everybody can go out and buy NVIDIA chips and spend $100 million on that. I mean, some big businesses can, but not all of them can. about how you adopt through a user-centric design, right? So it's got to be tailored to the enterprise, right? It can't just be some generic thing that you interact with. It's got to be tailored. So how that can be done in terms of enabling capabilities, workflows, automation across different sectors within the enterprise is important. Operating model, so what shifts need to be done in terms of going from where you are now to adopting the technology. So things like governance, ethics, really, really important. And if you're having some troubles with that, feel free to come and ask us. We've dealt with various sectors that have different ethics. So you've got finance, who have very strict financial regulations they have to follow, and then you've got healthcare, which follows very different regulations. And the governance regulations are rapidly evolving. Probably you've heard about the EU AI Act that's coming into effect from August 1st. And for every violation, it's roughly 35 million euros or 7% of your gross turnover for every violation. So yeah, enterprises, please be careful. And then also talent and culture, right? Is this going to cause an issue in terms of training and upskilling, right? Not everyone can suddenly become AI engineers or AI researchers, and how that can actually be rolled out within the company is particularly important. Now, how am I doing for time? Okay. Right, so to address all those 5 questions, what IBM has come up with is a 4 core principle strategy. The first of which is openness. So we believe open and transparent models and development is key, right? Some people don't necessarily believe this, but I think majority do. In terms of targeted, I think this is also a very, very important and underrated one. One model is not going to rule all, right? There's going to be various models for different industry sectors and different specialities. So we decide to adopt a smaller foundation model designs for specific industries. And that's shown to give some really, really good results. And also inferencing cost is cheaper, and there's a number of other benefits with that. Trusted, really, really important point about how you can actually build AI models with data and provide transparency and governance, right? What type of ethics are going to be included and going to be transported to your model, and how you can monitor that, right? Because if you've got, let's say, one of the banks we had dealing with had 50 million queries per year in their mobile banking app, right? Humans can't overlook that. You're going to have some clear guidance for the AI to be within a framework that's not spewing out sensitive information. And then also empowering, right? If you have a platform where you can bring your own AI models and data, that's also great too, right? So it's not just you use proprietary models from one particular vendor or not. You should be able to really bring your models and have these core principles built in. Right, so now going on to the current utility. So a lot of the models and development we've seen at the moment has been around retrieved augmented generation. And I'll say that's the #1 industry standard at the moment of how companies are adopting Gen AI in terms of foundation models. So there are a few issues with current vanilla LLMs, is what I call them. So for example, they're not trained on specialized domains, right? If you take some very large base model, yeah, it'll give you probably decent outputs, but it's not targeted, right? And it doesn't know information about your specific enterprise, for example, right? So if I was to say, give me the bank loan rate from, I don't know, Barclays or something, it's not going to really give me a very good answer. And also that model can be, those rates could have changed as well, which kind of goes on to the second point, is that LLMs are statically trained, right? If I trained an LLM in 2021, it's not going to know things about 2023. That's just how the innate training is done. And also hallucinations as well. So a RAG, which is retrieved augmented generation, can help with that. So the idea is, it looks a little bit like this. So does this work? Maybe not, okay. Right, so on the left-hand side, you have your user, right? And they have an input query. And that goes to some type of chat interface, right? And then you have a search and retrieval mechanism associated with this, right? So you use some type of embedding method that's what the original LLM was trained on. And then you can search those specific corpus of documents that you have here, right? And then you can retrieve that information and then input that into the LLM, right? And this is a simple way of actually bringing repository data, local repository data to your LLM, okay? And this is what we've seen works really, really well in terms of like finance, healthcare sectors. This is working incredibly well. And also another really useful thing about this is that you don't have to train your models, right? So this is all inferencing without training. So it's really just the hosting cost and the inferencing cost that the companies have to pay to adopt this. So this is really, really good. And I am conscious of time, so I will skip the next slide, which is to do with generation of LLMs, how we actually monitor this. But if I'm allowed an extra minute, then maybe I can come back to this. Right. In terms of emerging trends, who here has heard of agentic AI? Right. Good. Okay, so agentic AI is, I'm going to say, very, very cool, right? And it could be quite a big game changer. So I'll go through the formal definition of what it is. So agentic AI refers to AI systems designed to autonomously pursue complex goals and workflows with limited direct human supervision. That's a mouthful, right? What it really means is you can have an AI system that can carry out the tasks itself autonomously. Now, at the moment, if you're interacting with, I don't know, something like ChatGPT, right? You ask it to, can you write me a code for blah, blah, blah? You still have to then take that code, go bug test it, compile it, do all the other things you have to do with it, right? Get out the plots, etc. But what agentic AI actually does, it enables you to have those sort of function calling capabilities within the LLM itself, right? And these are the considerations when thinking about agentic AI, right? Because we were also seeing some industry adoption towards this as well. So of course, it's autonomous, so the lack of explainability is a particular problem, but there's a lot of stages that are working towards this at the moment. The good thing about it is that it has minimal human oversight, so it can do a lot of work itself, right? This idea of digital labor once again. It's very adaptable in terms of the planning, right? It's a dynamic thing. It takes the information itself, figures out what sort of tools to use, and it goes about that optimization process dynamically, right? It's not static. You can also get it to do reasoning. So for example, if it carries out a number of tasks, you can get it to explain why it's done those tasks, right? So similar to how a human would say, all right, if I've got some differential equation, how do I go about and solve it? A student will tell you, okay, I'm going to go by this method, this method, this method. This is really kind of what the agentic AI is trying to mimic here, but not for scientific machine learning. And the great thing about it, it can be used for workflow optimization. So for example, if you don't know how to get specifically from A to B, you can have an agentic system that kind of does that for you, right? So it'll find a result from A to B. It may not be the most appropriate or the optimized, but it can certainly find one. So I wanted to do a little exercise, actually, with the last remaining minutes that I have. So suppose I wanted to build a stock trading assistant using GenAI, okay? So essentially, I have, let's say, a foundation model, I don't know, ChatGPT or something like that, and I want to embed it with function calling capabilities to do stock trading for me. I'm not saying do this. This is definitely not financial advice. How would I go about doing this? Right? What type of functions would I embed within or give to an LLM to try and give a stock trading assistant? How could I get one of those? Any ideas? Okay, good. Well, we're about to find out. So suppose that I have an LLM over here. What I can do is I can give it function calling capabilities for a number of functions that will be associated with stock trading, right? So it could be get portfolio evaluation, right? So if I say to my AI system, all right, get me my portfolio evaluation, it'd give me a live portfolio evaluation, right? It's not going to be static. To open an order, right? To open a position, right? To close a position. To trade a stock, which involves opening and closing positions, right? Shorting a stock, whatnot. Get the current stock price. It can inform me about current stock price. And also the stock chart, right? So let's say I want it to plot for me the Tesla stock price for the last 5 days with a certain standard deviation associated with it. It can do that too, right? And then you could also embed this into a RAG, which is referred to as agentic RAG, where you could give it some information about stock trading, right? So you could give it some information about how to trade penny stocks, or how to do long positions or short positions or micro tradings, whatever you want. So once again, I'm not suggesting anybody does this, but the idea is you can create autonomous systems that can actually function. So with that, I believe I'm pretty much out of time, so I'll go through very quickly the summary. It's fair to say the impact of generative AI is significant, right, across many domains and areas. and we're just seeing an absolute boom of adoption, right? There are some issues that still need to be ironed out before adoption can really go to the next level. One of them is governance, and there's a lot of work IBM and sort of many other industry partners are working on to do this as well. I think emerging trends is really, really cool and shows great promise, this idea of agentic AI and how it can autonomously solve tasks, which is another way of moving towards that manual labor to digital labor idea. And also, something I didn't touch upon in this talk is the use of the multimodality in industry as well. There's a lot of interesting applications associated with image and audio, and that's something that I think will be quite big in the short term. So I just wanted to close with this particular quote, which is from Jensen in NVIDIA: "AI will not take your jobs, but people using AI typically will." But I want to close on a positive note, and the future is definitely bright. So if you've not tried any of these things, definitely have a go with them. And I believe I'm now out of time. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Imran.